Trump this week. And he said, interestingly enough, in my opinion, he said that socialism and communism are the biggest threats, and they must never be allowed to happen in the United States of America. He said it would never happen in America.
Content over everything!
And which ties into that. What is the threat? You know, when they say Venezuela's a threat, China's a threat, North Korea's a threat, what do they mean? A threat. A threat militarily, a threat socially, a threat, like they're saying, of course, Venezuela to their own people, but it's not much of an argument because there are many other parts of the world where we've got allies who treat people as badly or worse than the people in Venezuela are treated. Take Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and so on. So,
Exactly.
so the argument is it doesn't hold.
You are talking right, swear. Keep talking about fucking Saudi Arabia with Yemen, what's going on?
Well, I'm not going to talk all that much about that, but I want to point that out just in relation to understand the the comparative weight.
Can I ask you something?
Of the argument. One sec. The comparative weight of the argument when you're understanding what is true and untrue, because so much dust is thrown in the eyes of people in the world by the leaders of the world and by the media and the politicians and so on, that it's very difficult to decipher what truth is from untruth.
Give time for us.
And in the case of Venezuela, it's one of the most extraordinary campaigns I've seen.
Can you give time for us to talk?
For who's us?
To asking you.
Who's us?
Us.
Of course you can, but he asked the question. I was trying to answer him.
Me.
You want to say something?
Yeah.
Fire.
Boss, now it's fucking Saudi Arabia and Emirat Arabia take all the world, and the American behind Saudi Arabia, behind Emirat Arabia, because they have much money, they have petrol, they follow Saudi Arabia, they follow fucking Emirat Arabia about what? Kill people in Yemen, kill people.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Are you making a statement or are you making a question, or what are you trying to get me to do?
I'm just asking you.
Asking me what?
Yeah.
What are you asking me?
Asking you, America now, behind who? Emirat Arabia, Saudi Arabia, kill Yemen people, kill.
It is perfectly true that the character of our era, the character of the times we live in, is a system, is governed by a system that you can still call imperialism. It's imperialism in the sense that the dominant economic and military powers in the world seek to control and dominate the world economically, politically, militarily, through utilizing the instruments at their disposal to maintain and extend their dominance. That explains the behavior of Donald Trump.
This is different.
Sorry?
When they kill the people every day.
No, I'm sorry, what are you saying?
Every day.
In relation to what I said.
Do you know how many people die every day in Yemen? Do you know?
Yes, I'm familiar with the circumstances, yes. Yes.
What about the system here? What about the England? What they gonna do? Just watch?
They're not going to watch, they're going to support the Americans.
Huh?
And they are supporting the Americans.
Why they follow
And they are
American?
supporting the Saudis.
Why they follow
You ask,
American?
because I'm trying to explain how the
Why
system...
they follow American? Why?
Sorry? Why do they follow the Americans?
Is mother of American? England is mother of American?
Well, it is the mother of America, yes.
Really?
Yes.
This is crazy.
The United States was initially a colony of Britain. And when that colony broke away, and there was a war between Britain and America, the Americans declared independence and founded their state based on opposition and overthrowing the colonial domination of Britain. But nevertheless, they maintained thereafter, or shortly thereafter, a close relationship with the United States. And therefore, yes, it was the mother of the United States.
Can I ask you
Enough.
something?
I get the impression you're drunk before this meeting starts.
Okay, forget.
Right.
Let me. You talk.
I
Let
don't
me talk
want to
with
spend
you.
all the time discussing with you. Thanks very much.
Because I'm talking about.
Because it seems that you're drunk. I may be wrong, but it seems that you're drunk.
No,
and
I'm
therefore
just
you don't
asking
seem
you.
to be following the thread of discussion.
I'm just asking you.
Whereby I'm
just-
trying to advance the level of discussion.
Okay, I'm
Not
just-
just because you want to discuss something,
Okay.
but because I
No,
hope to
Give
be
me
able,
time. You
through
just
this
time.
meeting,
After what?
After he finishes his speech.
After what? After what?
I hope to be able,
First, not you, yeah?
No way.
through
no way.
the meeting,
No way. Calm down.
to advance a certain level of discussion,
No way. You remember me?
to thread together an argument
course.
You remember
that
me?
has some consistency.
Calm down.
It doesn't demand that you agree with what I say. It does, however, demand that there be a certain foundation that you build upon during the discussion, and that foundation be built upon and discussed and debated as it's constructed and
thing.
formulated.
Same thing.
Rather
Same thing every
rather than
time.
repeating
Same thing.
at the same level. Of course it's allowed.
Same
The question is the discussion.
Same thing. Same thing
about
every
what?
time. Every time same. Then you.
Well, that's why I'm trying to avoid that.
Same.
The reason I'm trying to avoid that is because since the last year or so,
Same
there's
thing.
been a high level of interest in Speaker's Corner, reflected in the cameras and the videos broadcast on YouTube.
Forget
and
this.
therefore I've
Talking
sought,
about what's going
I've
on.
responded.
Talking about what's going on.
Please, my friend.
Talking about
Please,
what's going on.
please.
Yeah, talking
I'm
about what's
attempting
going
to
on.
talk about what's going on. One is in this meeting, two is in relation to what this meeting is about.
Thank you.
And
Thank
rather than just circulate
Thank
the
you.
discussion around America bad, Britain bad, why bad, Yemen kill, bad, bad. Yes, I know that, I agree. And on that foundation, I'm seeking to explain.
Exactly.
You may not agree with my explanation,
No, that's
but I
fine.
seek to give that explanation as the basis for us, rather than go in circular discussions. You said that, no said that, no said, like the Brexit debate.
And furthermore, where would be the fun if we agree?
Sorry?
Where would be the fun
That's
if
fine.
we agree? If we agree, there would
I'm
be
not
no fun.
asking you to agree,
That's what I'm saying. No, I'm agreeing
but
with
in
you.
order,
There'd be no
I'm
fun.
glad you're agreeing that we shouldn't be able to, we shouldn't have to
Answer.
agree.
Yeah, answer to him, please. Answer to him.
No fun at all.
Answer.
The precondition for having a reasonable discussion and debate, worthy of being listened to and contemplated and engaged with, is that there is a raising of the overall level of discussion. Not that everybody discusses at some PhD level, but that everybody doesn't discuss at the gutter level. So highest common denominator, or better said, not the lowest common denominator, but the highest common factor, as a friend of mine used to
Can
say.
I ask you something? Can I
No,
ask-
you can't,
No,
because
no,
you're not going to take it
I have
anywhere.
to
Yes.
ask you.
The gentleman behind you. No, you.
I have.
He's asking.
I have to
You
ask
have already intervened
Yeah.
for 10 minutes and wasted everybody's time.
Okay, you know what I'm gonna ask you.
I don't know
You
what
know
you're
what
gonna
I'm gonna ask you.
I don't
because
have a
you,
clue.
You don't want to answer. You don't want to
The
answer.
gentleman here is asking, you are not.
Bring up the issue of
I'd
the
like to know,
European
come with
Union.
me.
I personally think
wait,
that you're wrong about the
A
European
little louder.
I personally think that you're wrong about the European Union.
Meaning what?
The reason is,
What am I wrong about?
yes, that Britain should stay in the European Union. The reason is,
When did I say that?
well, previous years and things, I think you've said
In
that.
2016, I argued in the referendum campaign that to vote to remain. Since 2016, I have never argued that we should remain in the European Union.
Okay. Then I should be updated because maybe I thought you were a Remainer. But
That's
anyway,
2.5 years ago, my friend. What have you been doing?
And we're still in.
in any case,
Are you saying that
I
you
just
changed your
want to say
position?
about the-
No, I said that if, at the time of the referendum, I said that if the people vote to leave the European Union, so be it.
Exactly.
That's
Can
all.
Can I ask you something?
I didn't, but I voted
Okay.
against leaving the
No,
European
no,
Union.
No, me.
Shut up, will you?
In terms of
What's the matter with you?
I wanna
Your mother
ask-
didn't give you enough attention?
I want to ask you.
No, I don't want to hear from you. There's a meeting over there that's great for you.
Let me ask you
They
something.
will welcome you
Who?
over
Open
there.
arms.
Write
Okay.
it down.
Can
write
I
it
ask you
down.
Please.
something? Can I ask you something?
No.
Why?
I'm not going to go through
No,
with this.
enjoy him.
I'm
Go
not
on.
wasting an hour in the freezing freaking cold of me and everyone else because you happen to have a problem. I'm not going to do that.
Just ignore
I'm not going to ignore him because he's refusing.
He wants the attention. That's what he's getting.
Well, he can
agreeing.
go away and get some attention.
Can I ask you
No,
something?
I'm stopping the meeting. I'm stopping.
Why?
I'm not doing it.
You know what you did? You know why he's scared? He's scared what
I am not wasting everybody's time discussing with an idiot. And you're behaving like an idiot.
Can I ask you?
No.
No? Yeah.
No,
Maybe
I'm
he
going to
says
speak
no, he has the
without
right
this
to say
gentleman
no.
here.
Can you
Right?
just take a break?
Does anybody
and then
want to
answer?
listen to this gentleman here? Right, so please go to another meeting.
You can go and stand over there and see.
You come back one time when you're behaving reasonably, but you're drunk and misbehaving. So piss off.
Can I ask you something?
No!
Can I ask you something?
Piss
He
off!
said no.
You don't know
What
me.
part of no don't you understand?
Anyway, you
What
got
is
to ignore
this?
him.
Can you answer
What
to me?
part
This is
of no
what
don't you
gets
understand?
Speaker's Corner a bad
N or the
reputation.
O, it's still
right?
no.
You don't know
That
how
rather
we
than
answer to
engaging in a
me.
discussion
where's
and
the
advancing
other
knowledge,
What about Jewish
whether
people?
I'm clever or
What
not,
about Jewish people and Palestinians? Huh? What about?
does anybody want to listen to him? No. Do you hear that? Do you hear that?
Yeah.
Right, please.
I don't care about them. I care about you.
Well, then I'm moving and you're staying here. How's that?
Okay,
Why
I'm
did you
gonna stay here.
let why don't you let others
We're
ask?
moving.
What about
Why don't you let others ask?
What about Jewish people?
Oh,
I'm sorry about that. I lost my rag a little bit, but that's Speaker's Corner over the years. You get to know when someone's not going to go away. And I have two tactics. One is ask the audience to get them to leave. If they don't leave, I move. That's all. I mean, that's how we'll always behave because I don't have another way of doing it. Yeah? That's my experience of Speaker's Corner.
If we can continue discussion.
Carry on.
Now, I've done a lot of research about this. I think what's been happening in the European Union is an attempt by the big banks and the corporations to bypass governments and accountability. And there's a lot of things that is wrong with the nation state. I agree. There's a lot of things that is wrong with the nation state. But what you can say about the nation state is that the people that we can elect and we can remove from power. You cannot say the same thing with the European Union. The European Union is an attempt by the banks and the corporations who've got together, and they're trying to bypass government.
No, can you repeat the question?
They're trying to
I will,
bypass government control and democracy. Now, what do I mean by that?
Okay, keep it short so so that people can hear.
Yes.
Otherwise, we're losing the audience,
Okay.
right?
No.
The gentleman. Let me just summarise what the gentleman's saying. Let me, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Right? He is saying the European Union is an institution controlled by large-scale interests or big corporate
Banks and
interests
corporate-
and banks, and it's out of control. It's not democratically accountable, and therefore he supports the idea that there should be Brexit and people have more control over their livelihoods and conditions. That's what you're saying. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
And the question is, or the contribution is just that?
No. I can because I
Keep
want
it
to-
short so that we can.
Okay, now the thing is, a lot of people think that the European Parliament, because it has the word Parliament, it can bring legislation of its own. But the thing is, it cannot bring legislation of its own. It can only approve of legislation given to it by the Commission. So I want to correct a lot of Remainers.
Yeah, but
who
I'm
think-
not discussing the debates happening on LBC. I'm sorry. You want to listen to them, you can turn on Newsnight, television, radio, 24/7, 2.5 years of shit, right? This is not what we discuss at Speaker's Corner.
So what do we
Speaker's
discuss?
Corner is fundamental philosophies and politics and economic, in my opinion. That's what I'm here for.
What is it that's
How will I
fundamental?
respond to what you're saying? Take it to a slightly wider conceptual framework.
Yes, the one.
What are we debating when we discuss Brexit and the European Union? What are we discussing? We are discussing the simple fact that if you have pan-national institutions, it inevitably means that the nation state loses a proportion of its national sovereignty.
Yes.
Then comes the question which I pose as the primary question in the discussion. What is the democratic control within the nation state itself? The truth of the matter is, the question of the European Union has galvanized the attention of the people around the question. I heard someone on today's Nigel Farage show on LBC spouting and blabbering the usual claptrap, and it boils down to the terminology: take back control of my country. I want my country back. You know these numbskulls who come up here, Tommy Robinson fans and co, and hangers on, and come up here, we want our country back. You remember they came up here March last year, tussled me around, started some fights, proclaimed they're defending free speech because they want our country back. And then he marched off from the corner and they said, free speech for British people. Right?
Can I take you up on
So
that?
let me deal with this. What does it mean to control your country? Because all the things you talk about, democratic accountability, corporate power, misuse of power, they all take place and are centred, not the European, that's the Europe, didn't start a European, they are centred in British institutional frameworks. Look at what happened over the last couple of weeks when the United States President selected a man called Juan Guaido and appointed him president of Venezuela. He stood on a demonstration. He was scared to do anything. 2 weeks before, people were saying, declare yourself president. In fact, it was Mike Pompeo and the American administration. They were saying, declare yourself president. And he was going, I'm willing to declare myself president. And then on the 23rd of January, he stands up on a rally and he says, I am now the president of Venezuela. I mean, it's like me saying, I'm now Queen of England or King of England or Prime Minister of England. It's a bloody joke. He doesn't have the slightest constitutional right to declare himself president. And yet, within minutes, Donald Trump declares this is the president. And then the European Union and Britain, who tussle around for 2.5 years talking crap about Brexit, chaos, disorder, no food in the shops, everyone dying of starvation, borders blocked up with massive lorry traffic, nothing able to work, Britain collapsing in a day, everyone killing each other. That was the latest one. Everyone's going to kill each other on the 29th of March. All this shit claiming to be constitutional, parliamentary. Europe can't discuss this. Europe will discuss that. We have discussed this. There are elections here. And then the European Union declares, out of nowhere, that the president of Venezuela must call new elections in 8 days. Otherwise, the European Union will sanction Venezuela, and they recognise this guy who stands up somewhere in Caracas, like I'm standing up somewhere in London, and declares himself the leader of the country.
You never even participated in an election.
Who didn't?
Guaido.
Well, Guaido refused. I mean, last year when there was a presidential election, they boycotted the election. And so it's complete bullshit. And then the British, Jeremy Hunt, he turned around and said, they stuffed the ballot boxes. There are no ballot boxes in elections in Venezuela. They vote by fingerprint. Stupid idiot. But did he care? No, because once it was about the global interests of British capitalism, of European capitalism, of American capitalism, of the West, then of course they all come together. Donald Trump, they criticise him one day. Next day, oh, Donald Trump, we agree with him. Everything he says is right about Venezuela. Everything he says, right. Why is it right? Because that dickhead, Donald Trump, turns around. I watched his State of the Union address. What a joke. In Venezuela. And he's always preening himself. What a dickhead. Preening himself all the time. In Venezuela. And he's got to be the ugliest creep on earth. And Venezuela.
Hey, don't
They
talk
got
shit about the
socialism.
orange man.
They got socialism.
Orange man, good.
They got socialism. And look where they gone. The truth of it says a stupid Venezuela's was the richest, one of the richest countries in the world. What a lot of bullshit.
In terms of
The
resources.
Venezuelans lived in penury under American dominance prior to 1999 when Hugo Chavez became president of Venezuela. What happened? Yes, there was an economic collapse after 2015. The people have suffered as a consequence of that. But does that mean the British army, the American army, the European governments, the European banks sanction every country where the people live in penury? What about Honduras? What about Argentina? What about Brazil? What about India? What about Ethiopia? What about Guatemala? What about Pakistan? What about Afghanistan?
What about North Korea?
Yes, North Korea. Well, that tells you exactly what the problem is. The problem as far as Maduro's concerned, and I would fully understand if he says to himself, why are we being pushed around? And North Korea is not pushed around. Because North Korea's got a nuclear bomb. And we don't. And therefore, if the Russians bring us a nuclear bomb, or the Chinese give us the technology for a nuclear bomb, then you see how quickly Donald Trump arranges a meeting and a summit where he discusses with Maduro on equal terms. That's all they understand. That's all they understand. Might is right. That's what they understand. You see these dickheads. The British government.
That's how the world works.
The British government. What did they do? They ordered the Bank of England to steal exactly at a time when they say Venezuela's got no food, Venezuela's starving. They have TV programs like Horizon, Venezuela, chaos, starvation, poverty. They're going on now. Humanitarian aid from America, £20 million. It won't go to solve one day of Venezuela's problems. And yet, the British government told the Bank of England to seize $1.2 billion of gold from the Venezuelan people. They've stolen it. The Bank of England did it. The Bank of England, the Russians are actually buying the gold. The Bank of England did it. So what a lot of bullshit they are talking, defending the Venezuelan people. They want to rob and plunder the Venezuelan people.
Obviously.
They want a dictatorship in Venezuela on the lines of the old dictatorships in Venezuela, or in Guatemala, or in Colombia, or in Nicaragua, or in Brazil, or in Argentina, all of which were backed by the United States of America. And it's not an accident that the Americans are presently attacking Venezuela only after this guy Bolsonaro was elected in Brazil. This right-wing, pro-military thug elected in Brazil who can facilitate a reactionary movement.
You can
A
call it
reactionary
right-wing, but
movement.
why is he a thug?
He's not a soy boy.
What?
Bolsonaro is not a soy boy.
Soy boy? What's a soy boy?
Testosterone.
An
Sorry,
emasculated
what's
man.
a soy boy?
Don't you know?
I don't know, you tell me.
An emasculated man.
A man who drinks milk.
No, soy milk. Too much soy milk.
Often you find, my friend, those people who pretend to be the most tough, mighty and strong, right? They're the ones who jump in a collective swimming pool with each of the boys and touch each other up, right? The soldiers, why do you think they're so macho, strong? Hate the gays, hate this, hate that, right?
Why do you
By
associate
pushing
macho
them-
strong
by
with
push-
hating the gays? They are
Because
very
that's how-
macho gay guys.
Okay, that's true. But it is a fact that generally, historically, the type of scenario like Bolsonaro's
No, it's not.
Bolsonaro
In
is
ancient
declared.
Greece,
Bolsonaro
many
is
Greeks fought
declared
that
his
fought in the same
opposition
line
and
as
hatred to the
hoplites
gays.
were
Right?
lovers.
As one
The
of his
sacred
coach.
band, the
Hang
sacred
on,
band of
hang on,
peace
hang on, hang on,
was
hang on, hang on,
composed by
hang on,
couples.
hang on. The right wing, Donald Trump's, Bolsonaro's and so on, have made it one of their ideological campaigns to attack what they call cultural Marxism. And cultural Marxism is supposed to be promoting sexual liberation after the 1960s.
It's got nothing to do with sex.
It's got a lot to do with sex,
No,
my
it's
friend,
not.
and that's why you were talking about it.
Left-wing people don't enjoy sex.
My friend, what are you talking about?
I'm trying
Where is
to.
the sex?
I'm trying to.
Sorry?
I'm trying to
Okay.
understand.
And so they also ran campaigns, what they call the undermining, like this Jordan Peterson guy, the undermining of the male, of the alpha male.
Yeah, Jordan
you know.
Peterson is right.
Right about what?
Right about almost everything.
I'm trying to understand.
Like what?
Like what? For example, there is a current emasculation of males in the Western society right now at this point. Do you agree or disagree with that?
What do you mean that's
Yeah,
your
they're,
problem?
look, they're promoting ideals that go against masculinity, against manliness. They call it toxic masculinity.
Well, it depends what you mean by masculinity and manliness.
Look,
And the problem with his
Yeah, it
argument,
depends. It
the problem with
depends
his
on
argument
because
is
the problem is
it
that
ends
some
up
people-
bolstering. You look at the people who run around supporting it. It ends up bolstering this type of stupidity, where he says, it's about milk drinkers.
Yeah, it's soy boy.
Or, soy boys, as this guy
no, but
says.
it is
Soy boy.
proven
You're a
that
soy
soy
boy.
milk reduces libido, reduces testosterone in men. It's
I'm
scientifically
sorry.
proved.
I'm sorry. Whether that is scientifically proved or not is completely.
Look it up, look it up.
is-
You're not-
look, whether that is scientifically
you're a
proved or
white
not,
guy, you're a
I
white
couldn't give a damn.
Why not?
I couldn't give a damn. The idea that there's some sort of fantastic male image that's supposed to be represented by the sort of soldier, the capturer, the man, the caveman. This is the problem with his
Not the
argument.
caveman.
He seems to believe that human beings have always been based around some natural, biological, historical formation.
Because they have.
That's not true. For the majority of human history, females dominated society rather than men.
What?
Probably 9/10 of human history.
Only the ugly ones.
Matriarchy and matrilineal descent was the norm. Matriarchy and matrilineal descent was the norm.
One society, one
Let me
matriarchal
explain to
society.
you. Let me
It was a
explain
great
to you.
empire throughout
Let
history.
me explain to you.
Give me one example.
I'm giving you the
Okay,
example
sorry,
now.
I apologize. Go ahead.
If you look at the world's cultures, you will find all over the world, India, Africa, China, and so on, you will find communities that are matriarchal and matrilineal. You will find many different forms of sexual behavior throughout the
but-
history of humanity.
But specifically,
Let me give you
Specific
one
example.
Specific example,
Let me
not
give you one.
generalised,
Let me give
specific.
you one example.
Yes.
Good.
The Yao tribe in Yunnan province in China.
I know them. I lived amongst them.
The Yao tribe is a matrilineal and matriarchal community to this day.
Yeah.
And that's
The
the
f-
best you can do. That's it, is it?
I'm explaining to you
Right.
how the dynamics of this
Never
program.
mind
The
feudalism.
Bantu, feudalism.
Never mind.
I said feudalism is a modern
he didn't
phenomenon.
say anything about feudalism.
No,
Feudalism.
but you were talking about patriarchy,
Yeah, I know what you mean, I know what you
matriarchy.
mean.
you know.
Patriarchy, matriarchy. I said, for most of human history, females dominated society and men were external to the community.
Not really.
They were
No.
invited in for sexual intercourse and expelled thereafter. The males were raised within the community by all the women. All the women were known as mother. All the women were known as mother.
No.
And the men were known generally as brothers within the community. Now you
No.
can check the
No.
historical
No,
dynamics
nonsense.
of the development of human
Where do
society.
you have that information from?
He's making it
My
up.
friend,
The Roman
it
Empire.
comes
Look at
initially.
the Mongol
It
Empire.
comes
Look
initially.
at Alexander's Empire. Look at the Achaemenid
I said
Empire. Look at
9/10 of human
Sassanid
history.
Empire. The Eastern
I am
Roman
explaining
Empire.
to you.
All
if
the
you
empires
care,
in the world,
if
all
you
the
care
great
to hear,
countries.
if you haven't heard this argument before, and it's new to you, you can expect that I will have to deal with many arguments and many counter-arguments dealing with this question before I'll be able to explain what the evidential basis for this is. So I'm trying to explain this to you in order to facilitate your understanding of this question.
Fair enough.
So you can challenge it, look it up,
Yes.
do the research
But-
and so
but
on,
look,
coming back next week.
Yeah, but
I am
the
not
problem is-
Run
talking,
away with a black
I am not talking about Alexander the Great.
Why not?
It's self-evident that that is a society that was male-dominated.
And Rome.
Like
Rome,
almost
for
all of
example,
them.
in Rome, for
Look at the
example,
influence that it
I'm
has.
answering you. In Rome, for example, where we get the origin of the word that we take for granted, that defines our male-female relationships, that defines our sexual interconnections. Male and female relations were governed as the same as here by marriage, right? People got married, they had children, right?
Yeah.
But what was the meaning of the word familia? What did it mean? Familia in ancient Rome, in Julius Caesar's time. What was the word familia? What did it denote?
No clue.
It denoted the man and his slaves.
Oh yeah.
It did not include his wife. It did not include his children. Now, that's where our word family comes from. So if that's changed so much that we no longer identify with the essence even of the word, it shows you that things have changed. What are the first human artifacts of beauty? What are the first artifacts?
The Venus.
Venuses.
The
Venus,
statues
the
of
mother figure, the female worship. Males worship the female.
Yeah, but
They
there were
consider
also
them
statues of
superior
rods
to the
set up
male.
in
Not to
floor.
say that
The
it was a
rods
matriarchal
symbolized
society.
male
That's not to
potency.
say-
I am explaining the foundation for this argument.
So what's that to do with soil?
All around the world, you will find, going back through the archaeology, going back through the history, from 2 million years ago, when human beings were first developed, or first began to develop, species of humans.
phallic symbols all over.
Species of humans, I'll come to that in a minute. Species of humans,
Women worship
1
phallic
minute.
symbols as well.
They didn't.
Zeus was in slave society.
That's why they have
That
buildings.
is in modern
There are temples
foundation.
all over Greece to Zeus. Come on.
Temples were created in slave society. Slave society emerged about 5,000 years BC. Human beings have been on Earth for 2 million years.
200,000.
2 million, well,
So the modern.
Homo sapiens sapien, 200,000
Okay,
years.
fair enough. That depends
But
where you define
hominids,
human.
tool-making creatures that emerged in Ethiopia and Tanzania. Our ancestors, recognizable as human beings. They existed 2 million years ago. They came out of Africa. And when they moved around the world from Africa, they were societies in which females held as high a role or a higher role.
Yeah.
They dominated society when there was no private property. There was no private property because we were unable to develop sufficient tool-making capacities to produce a surplus over and above what the community required,
Yes, but
or
private
able to be transported
You need
with the
private
community
property for
as we
civilization.
moved around the
There
world.
was private property.
But for the majority of humanity,
You need private property for civilization.
now there is a fair point.
You need it.
Civilization
Nobody's gonna take
emerged,
care of
as
something
the
they don't
gentleman
know.
here said, civilization emerged with the destruction of primitive communism and the destruction of matriarchy.
There was no primitive communism.
Civilization emerged
I drink milk
with
from
the
a-
destruction of that. You say there was no primitive communism.
And
When
I eat
Malinowski
beef too.
went to the Trobriand Islands in the 1920s, when he studied the communities and the life there, he discovered they were communist. They had no private property. The canoes they made
that-
were
that's a good
collective.
argument for
The
communism.
food they
Savages who
collected. It's
ate
not an
each other were
argument for
communists.
communism. It's a description of the dynamics
Let's realize
of
that.
human historical evolution.
Okay, wait. Let me.
So
let me
the
answer
idea
that. Let me
is,
answer.
the question I was answering was this,
But there isn't
which
a
the
stop.
gentleman here raised, which connected in with Jordan Peterson's
I'm not a fan of
theory of
I am.
evolutionary biology, which justifies his machoistic theoretical framework that man must dominate women, that man historically,
Say that
that
at all.
man
Say that at
histori-
all.
That is not what he said at all.
No, what he says was
He's
there are
actually very
innate
kind of
characteristics to man,
He's
to the
very
male
kind of
sex, which make them superior.
No, he doesn't say
Which
that.
makes them
No,
superior.
no,
Do you care to hear what I'm going to say?
Such overwhelming.
Do you care to hear what I say
misunderstanding of
instead of
theology.
hearing only half a
If it's
sentence?
falsehood, we don't want to hear.
Make them superior within the parameters of the possible. And therefore the IQ of males will tend to be higher than the IQ of females. The capacities of males in the corporate world, in economic life, in social life, in physical skills, in sports, in muscle strength, in their ability to achieve things will be greater than females. Those are the arguments that he makes. And believe you me, I've followed hundreds of hours of his talks.
Well, you've not understood them.
If you're saying
You might have followed them, you don't seem to have understood.
So, what however he says is, there are certain characteristics to females, empathy and so on, which are illustrative of female strengths, but they are interior strengths and they are emotional intelligence strengths rather than mental intelligence and physical strengths. And therefore what you get is a layer of idiots, I won't mention you,
Thank you. You're very
a
kind.
layer of idiots who watch a couple of minutes of his videos, see these things and start parroting the bullshit about how males are being oppressed and how the world is being turned into a transsexualized creature where males are losing their power and they need to reassert their power to man themselves up in order to discover their real nature and to correspond in their behavior to the real nature of their sex. That is why you used such a puerile example as soya drinking men. That's how we started this discussion, if you remember.
And he immediately associated soy boys
I know
with
what
gays.
he's talking about.
Immediate.
That's why.
Immediate association of soy boys
Now,
with gays.
how do I
Zero
know?
relationship.
How do I know? Well, because Bolsonaro has run a consistent and hysterical campaign against homosexuality and transsexuality in Brazil, right? Which has led to
he did say
beatings,
something
physical
against
attacks,
homosexuals.
violence
He
against
did
those
say-
people.
No,
right?
he never
Arguing
he never
the society
said that there
has
should be
become
violence
too weak,
against them.
too
Listen,
socialistic.
I'm not a Bolsonaro
to-
supporter, but you
I
need
didn't,
to
I
be
didn't say
honest
you are. I'm
about
discussing
it.
what he says.
No, just to make it sure that I'm not his supporter. But at the same time, you call him a thug. You say that he
He's a
spreads
thug.
violence. He never spread violence. How is he a
He
thug?
is
What did he do?
He encourages violence against those.
That's nonsense.
I mean, my friend.
Does Donald Trump encourage
don't
violence?
forget, I am a Marxist.
Does Donald Trump encourage
I have
violence?
comrades in Brazil. They have described the atmosphere in Brazil today, where people are beaten up on the streets, where
Communists under Lula and
my
Dilma
friend,
are
that
the
is
people
called
who ruined
whatever
Brazil.
In other
Lula and Dilma.
words, you
They should go
assume.
to prison.
One second.
Lula and
The
Dilma
gentleman who
ruined
has just
Brazil.
made a statement. I want to respond to what he said.
I'm talking about Bolsonaro.
Fair enough.
Now, the question I was asked, first of all, by Pavel here and others, was, particularly Pavel now, was where's the evidence? I started explaining the evidence for the violence being used against people in Brazil by this type, promoted by this type of ideology, that men are becoming too feminine, and therefore you need to man up the boys and smash the poofters and the communists and the lesbians and the transsexuals out, and the soy boys, as you say. That is. And then this gentleman here, one second.
Let me give you a fact.
If you want a discussion rather than hysteria, we have to move from one argument to the next,
Fair enough, fair
rather
enough.
than
Let him
simultaneously
explain.
attack me with 20 arguments.
It's true. He's right.
Now,
Let him-
the gentleman
let
here
him
has just said that didn't happen in the Soviet Union. It also happened in the Soviet Union.
Under communism.
He said the Soviet Union. You said Cuba. He said the Soviet Union. Under the Soviet Union, it also happened. The reason being was that Stalin, after the revolution, when initially homosexuality was legalized, marriage was legalized, people's free sexual behavior was legalized, divorce was legalized, but because of the economic condition in Russia, the masses who were poor, peasants, coming out of feudalism, had their own ingrained concepts, historically determined, about the position of men and women. And because they lost the landowners, the big capitalists, the feudal lords, they lost their authority. And the males generally were a prop in every society. The ruling class is the very top layer, but they can never rule on their own. they must have people below them who repeat their behaviour, who replicate the structure, who replicate the existing order. And this goes right down to the pecking order inside the family. So, for example, in Russia, it was normal for the man, a peasant, to beat their wives, to control their children, to beat their children. And even in the 1970s, when I went to school in Britain, it was the norm inside the families for the male to be aggressive towards the female, for the children to be beaten by their parents and at school. Every single class or every single day I went to school in the 1970s, people were beaten by the teachers. It was the norm. They talk about child abuse. That's what we had as the norm in the schooling system in Britain. From Victorian times, when the first public schooling was introduced, I don't mean private schools, I mean state-sponsored schooling was introduced, up until the 1970s when corporal punishment was abolished. So that ingrained itself in the psychology of people, that the way to treat children is to beat them.
Yes, that's
Sorry?
not right.
Why don't you piss off? You said the same thing last week. You've got a mental problem. If you don't like me talking, there's plenty of other meetings to go to. I am on a stage. It is Speaker's Corner. I'm saying what I think.
I think I've hit a nerve, that's what it is.
You have hit a nerve.
Yeah, I have.
You have hit a nerve because you're asking the same idiotic question.
No,
And I can't
you're speaking as
stand.
if you're on
I don't
theatre.
suffer fools gladly. And you're behaving,
Don't
even though
heckle
I'm
too
pretty
much,
sure
man.
you're
Don't
not,
heckle too much.
you're behaving like a fool.
Don't heckle
He's
too
talking
much.
like he's
No.
a theatre.
No, but look,
It is a theatre, you
It's
idiot.
not a theatre. It's not
Who defines that?
what is
You
a
or
theatre?
me?
What is a theatre?
A theatre is where you perform to an audience to get a certain idea or performance across to that audience. I have been speaking at Speaker's Corner, I'll answer you directly now, since 1986. And right throughout that time, I have learned and I have studied. First, I studied Stanislavski. The actor prepares, the actor's role, and so on. So I treated it as a theatre right back in 1986. Then I studied Bertolt Brecht. I read all his plays, I studied all his work, I read all his writings in order to prepare for Speaker's Corner. And then you turn round to me and say it's not a theatre. What are you, an idiot?
No, it is.
It is a theatre. Of course it's a
If
theatre.
you are not, look, it's a balance.
My
It's a balance
friend,
between.
my friend,
no,
look up the
between
meaning,
saying
look
things,
up the
certain things,
dictionary
and entertaining.
definition of the word oratory.
Yes,
Oratory.
He's right.
Look it up. In ancient
He's
Greece,
right here. I gotta
in
agree with you.
ancient Rome, if you go to Pompeii, you'll see in Pompeii, they had brothels, they had restaurants, they had entertainment centres, and they had auditorium where there would be performances and oratory. And the highest art of performance was considered oratory. I may not be good at oratory, but that's what my art is at Speaker's Corner. And you want me to talk to you like some square moron just discussing like on television on Newsnight.
Yeah.
No, my friend, that's not where we are.
No.
Watch the telly for that.
Your
Why are you
problem
here
is the
every week
exact
if you
opposite
don't
of
like
that.
it?
Your problem is the exact opposite of that because you're very good at oratory, but you're not very good at the reasons themselves. You don't actually give the right reasons. Listen.
So what's the right reason?
Okay, look, you were talking about how women ruled society in
I was
in the
saying
past.
matriarchy dominated human
Dominated
society
human society.
for the majority of human history.
That is completely wrong. Yeah, he's kind
Because
of right.
the evidence,
It's
the
completely
evidence.
wrong.
Bullshit.
The evidence are the empires, the great countries.
No, what
the
I
ones who
I-
dominated
when
the
did
world
I say-
were male-dominated
when did I say
societies. It's not about
Male,
right or wrong, it's about who
male
actually did it.
dominance
It's
came about
history.
with the emergence of private property. Private property is a new phenomena in
Okay,
human society.
okay, let me ask
It's
you
about
one question.
9,000,
One last question.
9,000, possibly 20,000
One
years
last
old.
question. One last
Part of
question.
evolution.
Just one question.
Part of
And
what?
it
Part of
will-
evolution.
My friend,
My friend,
how do you
Mustafa,
get
no,
private
no,
property?
No bird is going to
Don't
take
heckle
up
too
care
much,
of
don't heckle
another
too
bird.
much.
My friend, how was the
Another
United
cares for
States
her own
created?
nest.
How was the United States created?
No.
How was the United States created?
Conquest.
Conquest. What did they do? The settlers from Europe, what did they do when they went to America?
Manifest destiny.
What did they do?
They said the criminals.
Huh?
They
Colonized.
The colonized.
Slavery.
When they colonized America, was America not the homeland for somebody else.
Yes.
Right.
The Native
How
Americans.
comes those people were not able to stop them?
Because they have more power.
guns,
The invaders have
technology.
more power.
But what claim did those people have?
No, dude, but that's how history works.
Did the indigenous people of America
The indigenous people of
listen
America
to
were
my
fighting
answer?
between each other.
Listen to the question. Did the indigenous people of the United States or North America, did they have private land?
Yes.
They were, a lot of them were nomadic, weren't they? A lot of
They
them
had
were
Did
nomadic.
they have
between
private
tribes.
land?
They had wars between
Tribal
tribes.
land.
There
Listen,
was
Heiko,
no
Heiko.
private
Look,
land
wait,
in North America.
Let me say something. Let me just say something. You are implying, guys. Wait. This is a very
There
important
was
misconception.
no
This is a very
private
important
land in
misconception
North
of
America
private property.
before the European
Heiko,
settlers
wait
arrived.
up. Let me just say,
Disagree?
Tribes, for example,
guys. Let me just say
Right.
one
land
argument,
that
one thing.
Right.
They consider their own, so that's private land.
There was an anthropologist
No, wait.
in the 1860s.
You
His
are
name
associating.
was Lewis Morgan.
Nobody cares.
He went to America.
Heiko.
He studied the North American indigenous people. He became an honorary chief of the Iroquois tribe. And it was his studies that led Engels and Marx to draw the conclusion that all human society had in some way or other been similar to North America
Somebody would steal
or to South America, that they had no private property, that they had no private property in land.
Oh,
And
in
therefore
land.
the question emerged.
in land, purely by land, because
I
they were
didn't- I
fucking
said
nomads,
private property
man.
or land. Well, exactly.
Many of them were nomads.
So
but
when
that's
we
still
were at
private
this stage
property.
of development,
Look, Heiko,
what was the character of
you're
human
making
society?
a huge misconception, and you're spreading ignorance right
Why is
now
that
at this
ignorance?
moment. I'm sorry, but I have to say this because private property is not restricted to land.
I didn't say it was
Why
restricted
were
to
there
land.
wars?
I did
Why
not
were
say it
there-
was
Yes,
restricted
you
to
did.
land.
You said private property in
I
land.
did not say it
Yes,
was
you did.
restricted to land.
Okay, but you said
I
it's
said
private property
in relation to land. What I
Yes.
said was, why were the European settlers able to stake their claim like the Americans stuck their flag on the moon? Because they went to America and then they built a fort and they said, this is mine. And if an Englishman arrived, they said, yes, my young man, you
Complete
can go west.
misunderstanding of history.
You can mark out a piece of land
Complete
and say, this is
misunderstanding.
mine.
Complete misunderstanding.
Where's
It's
the
because the
misunderstanding?
nomads, the tribes, were
You
fighting for different
understand
things.
Slavonic language, right?
Sorry?
You understand Slavonic languages.
Slavonic language.
What is the mir?
the Mia?
The mir.
What?
In Russia, what is the
Mir.
mir?
Mir.
M-I-R. What is it?
Mir.
The
Mir
mir
means the world. Yeah.
is the ancient collective communes that existed in Russia up
teach
until
me
the
Russian.
Russian Revolution.
Teach me Russian, please.
Up until the Russian Revolution.
It isn't. It's the world.
But it's
Now-
not based on any
Now,
evidence.
I
There's no
ask
written
you this, the
evidence.
next
No evidence
question.
of it.
I ask you the next question. What is Clapham Common?
Rubbish.
What is Wandsworth Common? Where do they come from?
Common grazing,
Were they
common land.
created by the Queen of England?
Yeah. God bless the
The
Queen.
common lands were the collective of the people. They did not belong to anyone. And you could graze your sheep there.
You still
You
can
could
if you live on
collect
the borders.
collect food there. You could go and fish there. You could hunt there.
And you have to give all the
But
things
now-
that you need, all the products back to the state. So only
you
the bare
didn't.
minimum
No,
is
you
being
didn't.
given back.
No, you
yes,
did not.
that's what the commune means in the Soviet Union. That's what they did. That's why they
I
killed 10
said
million of Ukrainians.
pre-1917.
It doesn't
The
matter.
mere
It does not
pre-19.
matter.
It does matter
Does
because
not
we're
matter.
discussing
Lenin waged
ancient
war on the
collectivist
different peoples
forms.
to-
Was
to
the
conquer
world
them under communism.
prior to the emergence of slavery of Greece, Rome, Assyria, Egypt, the emergence of civilization,
I'll be back.
as we call it? Oh, please don't.
Yeah,
Was
don't
the
heckle too
emergence
much,
of
Mustafa.
civilization.
Don't heckle too much.
5 to 8,000, 9,000 years ago. Prior to that, where was the private property? Where was it? When we didn't make artifacts like the Venus statue, where was the private property? Where was it?
The
We've
tools that
lived
we
for
had.
2 million years. Where
Okay.
are the artifacts of private property.
Okay, I can answer that, but I will need a little bit of time. I will need
The
5
oldest
minutes.
artifact
I
of
will need
private
5
property
minutes to answer that
that
question.
could be conceptualized
I
as
can
private
answer.
property
I can answer that.
only existed about 20,000 years
No,
ago.
no.
What are they then?
Can I answer
What
that?
I've just come from the British Museum. What are these objects? Where are they?
Okay.
Show them. Man has been around 2 million years, or our ancestors. Where are the private property objects from prior to 20,000 years ago? There are none. Therefore, we lived in collectivist existence without private property.
Listen,
But it was
Heiko,
barbaric. It was primitive. It was simple. And in order to survive, one tribe would fight another. One community would
And
not
why
regard.
would they
not
fight
regard. One
another?
minute. Would not regard just the same as one group of chimpanzees will fight another.
And why do they fight another?
Because they do not recognize them as equal species.
Because they have
They don't
competition
have
for
a
the same
consciousness
resources.
of what
and
they
the
are.
resource you have is your private property.
What private property?
Even nomads,
monkey
they would
in the
come to a
jungle has
land,
no
and if
private
another
property.
nomadic tribe would come to the same land and use the same
monkey in what
resources,
private
they
property
are
does a
fighting for
chimpanzee
their
have?
property.
What private property does a lion have?
As soon as you
What
start
private property?
cultivating
What
land,
private property
The
does a
lionesses
soon as
dachshund
you
have?
start
Lionesses
What
cultivating
private
land,
property
you
does an
need to
ant
control
have?
it.
Zero,
What private
zero
property does a
understanding.
dolphin
As
have?
soon as you
What private
start
property
I am
does a
very
whale
disappointed.
have?
I am
What
very
private
cultivating
property
land,
does a
you
dog
have
have?
I
to
am very
start
disappointed.
controlling it.
Try and
You
take
can't
away
allow
I'm
other
asking you.
people
Simple.
on
I'm
your
very
cultivated
I
land.
can't answer that.
That's why people
What?
start fighting
I'm
over
very
land.
disappointed, honestly. I'm
As
very
soon
disappointed.
as you
Hang on.
As soon as you start cultivating land,
It's not even. I don't agree with that. I don't agree.
well,
Well,
good
let
for
him.
you.
Let him.
As soon as
I'm
you
good that you're splitting.
Even before
Let the
that,
gentleman
it's
say what he
even
wants to
before
say. Let him say what he wants to say.
As soon as people settle and start cultivating land, they have to. There's competition. People start fighting.
I
don't agree with that.
Hang on. He has an interesting point. As soon as people cultivate land, and I'll add a proviso, and are able to produce a surplus over and above what the community requires, then you have private property. If everything that's produced
I
is
disagree.
eaten, you have no private property.
Right.
If on the other side you produce more than what the community requires, not only do you, let's say you have a surplus of grain for 1 year, that means someone within a community can say, and you can have a battle, perhaps between the men, because they're physically stronger than the women, about who controls this bag of grain that's a surplus above what the community requires. And so some people will fight to get control of that bag of grain.
Isn't that inevitable?
But if there is no surplus, you have no basis for fighting over a bag of grain.
You are wrong.
Now
All
here
of
you
are
have
wrong.
therefore,
All of you are
here
wrong.
you therefore have, from what this gentleman himself
They put the food in
drew
salt.
out of his own
What's the
conclusion. I'll come
difference?
back to you 1 second, sorry, I ignored you. Therefore you have not only the basis for a surplus, and for some people, probably are stronger than the others, to grab that surplus for themselves and assert their right to accumulate at the expense of the others, but you also have the basis not only of a conflict between one group of chimps and another, but of one group turning around and saying, I've got a bag of grain, you've got a bag of nuts, let's swap the bag of nuts for a bag of grain.
But that's
You
where
have the
civilization.
foundation.
But
Yes,
that's where
that's
civilization.
where civilization begins.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what Karl Marx says.
Right.
That's what Karl Marx says.
I disagree to that too.
Okay, Mr. Speaker. Right.
I am explaining.
I do have a point. I do have a point,
I
and I
am
can
not.
prove my point.
Let me make
I can
it
prove
quite
my point
clear.
right now.
I am neither lauding
If you disagree, argue with me. Don't
matriarchy,
just tell me.
nor lauding matrilineal descent, nor am I lauding or praising primitive communism. I am describing human evolution.
Sir, can I...
Human social evolution, so that we can understand why the arguments
So we
of
evolved.
Jordan
Private
Peterson
private property
and
comes
the
way before what
modern
all of
day
you think it comes
evolutionary, biological,
Heiko, you are
psychological
all
theory
wrong.
that
All
he
of you are wrong
proposes
about private
is
property.
totally
All of
and
you are wrong.
completely ahistorical. It applies
Ahistorical is what
only
you're saying
to
right
a
now.
tiny part of human history.
Sir,
a tiny
wrong.
part
Sir,
of human
you're
history.
wrong, Heiko. You're wrong.
Let me give you another example.
Even some animals have private property.
In China,
Even animals
which
have
animal?
a lion has private property.
private
A lion may.
property?
Do
What
you know
private
how the
property?
lion society
Tell me
works?
what?
I will explain to you. I will explain to
private
all of you.
property does a lion have?
Let me explain to all of you what private property is. Because
Tell me
when-
the private of a lion.
I will. I will. May I?
lion.
May I?
Don't mess around. Of a lion.
The lion.
Right. What private property?
When a male controls a pride of females, that is the group of females that have sex with him and that hunt for him, because males don't hunt. The females are the ones that hunt the prey, and the lion is the first one to eat the prey. When a lion has a pride and another male lion appears, they fight. They fight for the give me some minutes. They fight for the pride. They fight for the females. The one who wins takes the pride for himself, reproduces with the pride, kills the children, and the pride hunts for him.
they
The
may or may not,
pride
but in
is
any
their
case, in any
private
The
property.
centrality
They
you're after.
urinate. They urinate for
The
other males
centrality of this
as well.
gentleman
Even
argument.
their territory
The
that
centrality of
changes,
the gentleman's
exactly.
argument now.
They urinate. The dogs urinate to mark their property.
Yes.
Private property is even animals have it. Even animals have it. Answer.
The gentleman now is extrapolating a slightly different argument. 1 minute, let me answer it. We're dealing with historical evolution of human behavior and psychology. We are not discussing, at the moment, we're not discussing modern day Stalinism or the communist Soviet Union or Venezuela today. We're not currently discussing that. So if you want to discuss that, fine, but that's not the present discussion. I want us to go somewhere with this discussion, because we're discussing the evolution of human psychology and the evolution of human behavior. Now you are changing the parameters of the discussion, legitimately perhaps, but you're changing it.
But isn't that
Because
progress?
you are saying, let me answer him.
But isn't that
Let me
progress?
answer him, for
Let him
God's
answer. Let him
sake.
answer. Let him answer. Let him answer. Go ahead.
You are saying that rather than the products of the human hand and brain alienated by us and exchangeable on the marketplace or between people for barter, which is how we as human beings understand private property, you are saying the right of a male to have sexual intercourse with a female and to dominate them in the animal kingdom is equivalent to private property. Yes. And yet that male is not the owner of the female. If the male dies,
In the
what
lion
happens?
society.
I'm sorry.
Society.
I wish to make the clear distinction, so you can choose to take your position if you want, but there's a clear qualitative distinction between what I'm discussing and what you're discussing. How we conceptualize private property is this. This is my coat. My coat is my coat, not because it's a coat. Not because it's a coat. But I thought you were going away.
He already came back.
Nothing more interesting. Nothing more interesting for you over there. It's a big park.
He's the
and a
comedic
big
relief.
city.
He's the comedic relief.
Nice art there is in the front. I believe it's correct. The frontal occipital lobe is driven automatically to go to what psychologists call seeking mechanism. And the seeking mechanism means that the natural instinct of all animals is to seek out things that make their body feel good.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson writes a lot about it.
And I'm quoting this from Mark Solms, who's a neuropsychoanalyst. He used to work. One second. Now, the seeking mechanism drives you to go out into the world and seek some satisfaction, to discover the world. A dog will run around like you do, run around Hyde Park, seeking something out, trying to make an association. In your case, limbic system. I make a mistake. The limbic system drives you to seek out. And
Big
this
up the brain
seeking
surgeon
mechanism,
back there.
this seeking mechanism is what you're expressing here. So when you come and condemn me, you are, because you went around seeking, and then you ran back here.
Okay.
Like a little dog.
Come back to the private property, please. Don't get distracted.
Now I was
get
saying, we're going to drop the pens, everything.
You're
What
dropping your
is
private possession.
private property?
Yeah, right.
As we understand it, not as cats understand it.
Right.
This is my coat. I bought it on a boot sale. I bought it from someone and paid their money because they owned it. They exchanged it with me, and I in receipt of my £5, and I wear it, and it's mine. And if someone takes it from me, they're depriving me of my private property.
I can already see his point.
It is an alienable object. I can give it away. That is the definition of private property.
No.
An object produced by the hand or the brain that can be alienated by you.
Are slaves
To
private
someone else.
property?
Slaves are private property.
Then what you said is
arguing,
rubbish.
what you are arguing, however, is that lions have their females as slaves.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
what you are arguing.
Exactly.
I think that is completely and absolutely false.
Why?
Human slaves work for another on tasks defined by them to produce objects, goods. I mean, you might argue, and that's where I'll give you some leeway, you might argue that the female lions are going out hunting for the males.
Right.
In fact, they're going out
That's
hunting.
how they evolved.
They're going out hunting for their pride, right? For their
Well,
pride
of course,
as
it's
a
not
whole.
only for the male, but the male is the first one to eat. You can
what
look it
you
up.
have said is
I'm
there
not
are
lying.
you are saying there are examples of possessiveness
Yes. Right.
amongst animal species.
Many animals, yes. Many
Which
animal
you are
species.
concluding is equivalent to the alienability of those possessive, of those creatures you not think, because they don't think per se, but of those creatures that you have a relationship with.
Speaker. Right.
Now, one second. Now, there are plenty of other animals that don't function the same way as that.
Yes.
Right?
I never said
So
all
you're
of them do.
choosing to define a specific group of pride relationships between these animals with no private property other than the other animals as private
they do
property.
have. Yes, they do
And
have.
yet they are not alienable by the
You
lion
want alienable.
or by the
I
tiger.
can give you alienable.
They are not alienable.
I can give you alienable.
Go on then.
Okay, what is the alienable, the material property of lions?
Nothing.
They are their prey, their territory. Exactly, their territory. They mark their territory. They eat their prey. They do not allow. Calm down. Calm down.
When I
calm down. Don't
define,
interrupt.
when I
When
discussed,
a lion hunts a prey, a buffalo for example, he will not allow hyenas to come around and eat his fucking prey. It is his private property. And hyenas will be afraid to come because he will attack them and defend his private property.
firstly, hyenas are not tigers.
And not what?
They are different species. Right?
Lions,
different
you mean?
species.
Yes?
We eat
Okay,
birds.
he will not allow
We
other
eat
males to come and
fish.
eat from his prey.
The fact that
You
we
can
eat
his
fish,
prey.
the fact that we eat fish does not make private property. I explained earlier on that human society, in the opinion I'm giving, and there is a very strong and I believe correct historical, anthropological.
Is this my private property?
Let me clarify what I'm saying.
Is this my private property?
Yes, but this isn't.
The tree isn't.
No.
Yeah, I don't own the
The air
tree.
is-
But if the garden is mine, I own it. It is my private property.
If
I
it is
buy this,
yours.
if I buy this thing,
How do you define it as being yours?
how, because I can
Hang
defend
on.
it by force.
How do you, no,
Because I can defend it from other people. If the law is in your side, the law will defend your property from others.
So
That
we
is
have
force.
systematic
If the force is in your side,
frameworks.
it is your property.
We have systematic institutional frameworks that define property. We have police, we have judges, we have lawyers, we have barristers, we have the legal framework established by governments, we have the state, and we have armed bodies of men behind that to
The
defend that
force,
private property
exactly.
structure.
That is the force.
Now, therefore,
So it's in
But it doesn't all come down to
It's in
force.
all animals. It's in
You don't have to be
It's a
strong
natural
Not
thing.
all
to have private
animals.
property.
Oh, okay.
But many
So,
different
yeah,
kinds of
many,
animals
yeah.
do have it.
There has to be a
So it's in
willingness,
innate.
and I agree with you in this, and it's actually completely in line with what Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels said. They argued that the state is composed basically of one simple thing: stick-wielding monkeys in defense of private property. That's what the state is. And the state emerges, that's what he says, and the state emerges when there is sufficient property to be fought over. Now, you might argue a hyena's fighting over that. I think that's taken a
I
purer
think
level
you're right.
because you're not producing anything. You're foraging from nature. Just the same as human beings who are hunters and gatherers. They're foraging from nature. They are not owning the animal they kill, they're eating it.
And immediately
They're
you have to
eating
say
it.
something preposterous.
They can't alienate it because they eat it.
Okay,
The
wait.
only thing they can alienate from
Wait,
the animal they eat is the shit they shit out at the end.
Do you agree that
What
this
does
is...
they alienate?
Wait, Heiko, wait.
What do they alienate?
Guys, let me give an example.
No, just one question.
John
Sorry,
Locke's
but I have a
argument.
question.
He's been a long time.
John Locke's argument in his essay
No,
on
you
human
had something to say.
understanding,
No, no,
Mustafa,
you
don't be rude. Don't be rude, Mustafa.
where he said that private property is innate to humans because of the effort that they make to maintain the land that they cut. In the state of nature, if you come to a piece of land and you work on it, that entails...
I've been in the jungle in
property to you.
Malaysia. In the jungle in Malaysia, they have people who live in the jungle. They've lived there for
Oh, that's racist.
possibly.
Well, they've lived there since they arrived.
What is racist about that? Stupid idiot. You are such a fool. You
He's
really
just
wanna,
calm
you
down.
really want to watch a
Heiko,
video of
calm
yourself.
down. He's trolling you. He's trolling you.
Sorry,
Calm down.
sorry, mate, let him off.
I think that okay. That's
Bro, it's a
okay.
joke, it's a joke,
No,
it's a
not
joke.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
He's trolling
because
you,
some
man.
people think that a type of idiocy they engage in the internet is suitable for the general public. You know, we're not on the
just
internet
ignore,
now.
just ignore. for now.
Now,
You know-
hang on. The gentleman here raised the question. I want to try and answer it. He's talking about private property being innate to man because what was it?
Because when you improve a property,
When you prove a property.
the work you do on that
Don't you see,
entails
don't you
it
see
to
the
you.
circular
No,
argument
I don't
involved
agree
here?
with that. I don't agree with
Don't
that.
you see the circular argument involved
Who are
here?
you,
My
God?
contention,
No, but I can prove my
my
point.
contention
The
is
difference between
private
somebody unreasonable
property-
and somebody reasonable is that the reasonable person can prove their point.
Sorry, can you...
My contention is that private property emerges at a specific phase in human development. I have been arguing, contradicted by Pavel in relation to lions and tigers tribes. I'll take you next. Lions and tigers tribes. I have been arguing that you can only have private property when you produce things. And you can only produce things at a specific level of technical development. No animal has the complexity of what the ancestors of man today had 2 million years ago. No other animal has that. In other words, the Olduvian axe, created in Tanzania and Ethiopia, the hand axe in other words, created by knocking flint against flint and creating an instrument that the director of the British Museum, Neil McGregor, called the passport to the world. It was the hand axe, the tool. And they defined, don't forget Richard Leakey says, man the tool maker.
Yeah.
Why are we human? Because we make tools. What do tools do? They enable us to conquer the environment.
Not only because
Firstly, to survive in different conditions. Secondly, after 2 million years, or better said,
claim property.
about 20,000 years ago
So the axe
to
is
9,000
property.
years
So
ago,
the caveman had property.
our ancestors first began to produce a surplus over and above what the community required. And that was the precondition for private property, and therefore also for civilization.
Heiko. Wait, Mustafa, shut the fuck up.
Gentlemen here.
There's a issue I've been meditating on, and you mentioned property. There's a big issue over identity politics at the moment. Yes. I suspect that identity is related to property.
On your feet. Down.
Would you agree with that?
Of course.
Right. So
You know,
so
what is a human being?
Right.
I'll let you come back in a minute.
yeah.
What is a human being and what endows them with power? How is it that private property led to the fall of women and the rise of men? To the fall of matriarchy and the rise of patriarchy? To the fall of matrilineal descent to the rise of patrilineal? What created that? I'll give an example. In the British Museum there's an antler, 15,000 years old. And someone had inscribed on this antler an image of a deer. They sought somehow through this art to control the external, the beasts that they wanted, the creatures they required, their relationship they had with those species. And somehow, using sharp objects, implements, our ancestors marked this thing and we found it. And what could you do with that? Maybe a man would say this in the community. There is this antler. And this antler, it looks magical. Everybody looks at them, marvel. For the first time within this environment, you have an image created by a human of the object in front of you, of the object of your survival.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you turn around, perhaps you got a flu, I put it on your head and you recover from flu. Suddenly I'm a chief, I'm a witch doctor, right? I've cured you. If
You're
you
the new
die,
Messiah.
if I put it on your head and you die, perhaps you were evil and you deserve to die. And there are tribes around the world today which still have these practices.
They do.
Yeah.
Now ask yourself this. We might think, oh, that's mad.
That's because they don't have
Primitive.
capitalism.
Because it is.
Simple. They don't have capitalism.
Yeah.
But ask yourself
They
this,
drink
and
soda.
this man incarnates this in his own behaviour. Because ask yourself this. Those guys over there in the van, when they come over here in their uniform and they say, don't do this,
Good guys.
do this, here's my badge, you can't film now, leave the park now,
They are
I'm
good
arresting
guys
you
because
now.
there are
Why
fights
can they
here
do
very
it?
often. And those guys
Because
are
when
the ones
they
who
come to you, they will
who
say,
make the fight
I
stop.
am a policeman.
Without them, they would
You
be
say,
dead
prove it.
long ago.
And they say, here is my uniform.
I used to live in Greece.
And they say,
They're not
prove
only
it.
good guys,
And they say,
not
here
always
is
good
my
guys.
card.
We need to
So in
respect
other
that.
words,
Yeah.
the objects they have are what endow them with power.
Okay.
Right?
I have
The
three
object they have
three
endows
examples.
them with power. What makes the queen the queen?
Okay, Heiko.
It is the fact that she's got the crown jewels. It's the fact that when she wears her outfit and she drives around and she comes into Hyde Park, people go, look, the queen's over there.
Okay.
How do you know she's the queen? In Russia, they used to do this before the revolution. They take a big box of dried peas. They pour out the peas. Then they make a gap in the middle. They put one pea in the middle. And they used to say, this is the Tsar. This is the people. Then they mix it all together and say, find the Tsar now. So only by identifying people, by their clothes, their uniforms, their artifacts, do you endow them with power. After all,
Yes.
what is our world run on?
Power.
Go down the street here.
Power.
Go down the street here.
Power.
Power is incarnated in the accumulation of private property.
No!
Of course it is. What are you
It's
talking
the
about?
strength to defend your private property. It's the power to take another
Are
one's
you
private
telling
property.
me
Heiko, I
that
have
Bill
three
Gates
examples
is a
for you.
tough guy?
Three examples.
Are you telling? I know
Wait,
Donald
guys.
Trump wants to make out he's a tough guy.
Three examples, and I can
Wants to
debunk
make out
your
he's a
idea
tough
of
guy,
private property.
But everybody knows he's a
I can
prick.
debunk your idea of private property with
What
three
are you
examples.
talking about, tough guy?
Three
Is
examples.
Theresa May
Guys,
a tough girl?
No tough
What are you
guy, no
talking
tough
about?
guy.
Because we
Mustafa,
agree
stop
she's
fucking
the Prime
heckling him.
Minister.
Jesus Christ.
We had an election.
Mustafa,
she
stop
won.
heckling
But
him.
it's
Prime
not
Minister.
about how physically strong she is.
It's about consensus.
It's
the
all
social
about
contract.
power.
Consensus.
It's all about power.
It's not about
Heiko.
uniforms
What is power?
or crowns.
Power
it's
is the
about
ability to
consensus.
enforce your will upon the
You
others.
utter
That is
donuts.
power.
About what?
About everything you want to do. It's the ability to achieve what you
But
want.
my friend,
it's the
how
ability
is-
to change
how
the world. That
how
is power.
How is power delineated in the world we live in?
coercion of
How's
violence.
it delineated?
Coercion. Threat of violence. Threat of
You're
violence.
saying power.
Ultimately by
If I
force,
break
yeah.
into that building over there that's been empty for 30 years, what will happen?
In the end, it's overwhelming
What will
force.
happen?
That is
You would get
the
evicted
backup
by the
of power.
will happen?
You would be evicted.
The police will come.
Yes.
The judges will come.
Yes.
I was evicted last summer, as some of you know, from a building that I was attempting to assert housing rights in. And the High Court
Well.
judge was a toffee-nosed Oxford and Cambridge boy, and he turns around and says, "No, this is about contract law."
It
He
is.
wasn't strong, but he had police, the judiciary, judicial
And
system.
my support, and everybody's
Exactly.
support.
Not
on him.
his
Behind
You
him.
see
power.
strength as a
It's not
very,
his
very small
power.
thing, as
The
sheer
power,
civic- the people.
the power is an incarnated ritual
No,
associated.
no. The people of this
Can I
country
finish a
support them.
sentence?
No,
You are
the
wrong.
people of this
You are
country
wrong, Heiko.
supported
You are
him.
wrong.
That's a very good sentence there.
The
Power
people,
is the
the
incarnated
people
ritual.
supported
It's the
him.
incarnated ritual
No.
associated and endowing alienated objects with fetishized power.
The
That's
people
why your
invested
uniform
him with
is
that power.
powerful. That's
The
why by
people-
wearing a
Judge with
uniform,
that power.
you attract an interest.
How
right?
did the communists
That's why people
win?
dress. I dress
How
like
did
this,
the
he
communists
dresses like
win
that.
if
Why do they
power
dress
is
differently?
only about
We
the
want to get
ritual?
You pay your
How
taxes,
did the
you
communists
pay your
win?
taxes, you
because
don't
of
throw him
the
off. You
objects
agree to it.
we endow ourselves
Nonsense.
with, the artifacts
Utter
and
nonsense.
representations we emanate to others, right?
So
It is the
in
fetishization.
artifact.
It is the fetishization which man has. No, of the alienation of their condition.
Nonsense.
The clothes you are wearing are not made by you. They are made by other
That
human
is
beings.
only one facet of power. Power is
It's
something
the
far
decide-
greater than that.
But the world today, when you argue with me in Hyde Park, what is the main argument you engage with me about?
Because I don't agree
What
with
is,
you.
No, what is the main substance of the argument you engage
Usually
with me
it's about Marxism, because
right,
I'm
which is
completely
about
opposed
what?
to
Which is
Marxism.
about what?
It's about abolishing private property to the
Thank
common
you.
folk.
Thank you.
And it's about giving all
Thank
the
you.
property to a totalitarian regime,
According to you.
according to every single
According to
communist
you.
regime in the world.
What I was
Socialist.
trying to do
Leszek
by
Kolakowski,
contextualizing
Marxism.
historical evolution of human beings in the long-term historical context, in the changes in human social and sexual relations, and in the changes of our understanding of what it
Nicely
is to
job
be
there.
human in relation to
Yo, Mustafa,
nature.
nicely job.
What is alienable and not alienable, and therefore what is private property itself. I'm trying to explain how we got to where we got,
Okay, right. Speaker.
and why, contrary to what you're saying, that communism is something alien to human nature.
It's against human
It
nature.
was the very essence of human existence for the majority of human history.
Bullshit.
But
Bullshit.
that was a primitive communistic system, as I was about to say earlier on. I've been to the jungle in Malaysia. I've seen Orang Asli.
And they haven't eaten you.
What is freaking? You are such an idiot.
Thank you.
That's racist.
Coming from
What
you,
is-
that's
I've been
that's
to the
the
jungle.
nicest thing
Let's
I've
get
ever
into the crust of this, just so you can see what a fool you are.
Okay.
I said I've
said
been
you're
to
talking
the
about
jungle in
jungle.
Malaysia,
Don't mind him, he's
and I've
trolling you.
seen the native people.
Oh my God.
They are called Orang Asli. Orang Asli. The word, their own word for what they are is people of the soil. Right? Of the soil. Original people. Orang Asli they
Hey,
call
the
them,
mud
right?
people.
And
That's
the Orang
racist.
Asli, they live with bows and arrows in the jungle. They have no private property to speak of.
And
What
we
about
have
bows and
evolved.
arrows?
Right.
What
And
about
we
the
have
bows and
evolved.
arrows?
So what's your point?
Question is this: although we have evolved, and I'm not disputing that, you're disputing that.
Why?
You're saying
why?
we never lived like that.
Mr. Speaker.
You're saying the story I'm telling about human evolution is false.
No,
we've always lived
I'm
under
saying we
capitalism.
have
That's
no
what you're
evidence
saying.
of that.
No!
I'm saying
The evidence is not just giving you the evidence. I've seen it with my own eyes.
You didn't understand anything,
Have you seen the
Heiko.
Moscow campaign?
Future.
You didn't understand anything. No.
Oh, this guy, he's a soy boy. He knows.
One second.
Look out, man, he's taller than you. No.
Didn't exist, that's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. What about the tools? If another guy takes his tool
This is
and
the same
starts
argument.
using
This
it,
is the same argument.
it's still
This
property.
is the same argument that the gentleman here was making about the lions and tigers.
Basically,
I am not
more or less.
disputing. I mean, I'm not an idiot.
It's private property.
Please treat me like I'm not an idiot. Yeah?
No,
I know
we can't,
fully
sorry,
well.
sorry.
I know fully well how different. I mean, I've watched what's his name, David Attenborough's films. I know how different animals live. You should also know that, and we know that creatures can be, in this respect, territorial in preventing, for example, another animal from going into their area. They might not. Some animals have a symbiotic relationship. There are some creatures that live on other creatures. There are, for example, some birds that live on hippos, and the birds live on hippos to eat the flies that pick on the hippos. You know, we know these things. I'm not a fool.
Are you sure?
So the question is
Are
this.
you sure about that?
Is the cave an alienable product? No, it's a natural environmental space.
That's it.
A
I need to say something.
human or our ancestors will enter that space for shelter. Yes, they will protect that shelter, or they may protect that shelter against others. You
Right.
might choose to say that is
Okay.
private property.
Okay,
but
I
it
know
is
what you
not.
mean. But the
Because
point
it is
is
not
that the
transportable,
work that the person
it is not
does to develop
alienable,
that cave
they cannot
turns
give
into their
it to
property.
another,
I don't
it
even
is there
agree
created
entirely
by
to
nature.
that.
If however, they build a house, if however they build a house rather than just live in a cave, and then they can alienate that house to someone else in exchange for some other private property, then you have private property.
Okay, wait.
But you do not have private property if you decide to live under the shelter. For example, if I go and live down in the gutter there, hang on, if I go and live down the bottom of the hang on, I'm giving way to you when I'm able to answer your point.
Come closer.
If you come closer, then we'll hear you.
Underneath those stairs, there is shelter. There are lots of homeless people living in London who go into various types of shelter.
Because the stairs are
What
somebody
you are
else's
saying to
private
me
property.
is, if I go, no, not a straw. I'm dealing.
It is a
exact-
straw man. It is a straw man.
Exactly
It
your
is a
argument.
straw man.
I am dealing with
It's exactly a
your
straw man.
argument.
Exactly
but
a
what
straw
I
man.
am doing, however, is by placing it in a modern context, showing how absurd your argument is. I am saying.
Heiko, it's okay to admit
I'll
that you're
give you that
wrong.
one.
Nobody's going to prosecute you.
Now,
For a second.
Hang on.
Okay, play. You
go
need to play a
down the
game with me.
stairs
Play a game
there.
with me.
You get shelter for the night. Someone else comes down and kicks you and wants to take your space. You fight them and drive them away. You are saying that makes that private property.
Yeah, bums
I
usually
am
fight
saying,
for
I am saying, neither de jure nor de facto is that private property. Why? Because we all accept. Because there is a consequence of what I'm saying. Follow it through. Follow my argument. Did you hear what I said? Right. So just follow this one last sentence. One last sentence. If what I'm saying is wrong, and what you're saying instead is right, it means the word homeless doesn't exist. That's what you're saying. Because the people sleeping in the tent on the street, the person sleeping in the cardboard box, they own that space. The person sleeping down in the gutter owns that. That's what he's saying. That's what he's
You
saying.
have such a
He's saying it
such
is
a
their
narrow view
private
of property.
property.
Such a
He's
narrow
saying
view.
that is private property.
I am surprised that you have
defining
such ignorant
using
ideals of property,
real
man. I'm honestly
examples
surprised.
what private property
I am
is.
honestly surprised, Heiko.
Come back. Okay.
Wait, bro. Let
Go
me get
ahead.
things done.
Go ahead.
What you're doing, so the Latin, they say
I'm answering you.
reductio ad absurdum. So you're taking the argument.
Exactly.
That's
to
not
a
absurdity.
completely absurd point
It is.
by saying that there's no definition of homeless in order to take apart my argument.
No, I'm defining homeless. I know what the definition of homeless is. You are rejecting that definition by saying, if I fight over a cardboard box, I am fighting over private property. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Therefore, there is no
That's
homelessness.
a kind of private property.
Is it?
It is.
Is it?
The only reason why.
So there is no homelessness.
Listen, the under the staircase,
The
it's the
definition
private
of home doesn't
property
exist then.
of the state. The only
What?
of the state.
What
the
is?
state
What
owns
is?
the staircase. The state owns it. You do? Do you understand what I'm telling
But
you?
you just
the
said.
state
He just
owns
said. Hang on.
it.
He just said. If you live in a
Yes,
cave,
because the
and you
state does
defend
not
that, hang
care.
on. If
The
you
state
hang on,
doesn't
hang
defend
on,
its
hang on,
private
hang on,
property
hang
in
on.
these
I'm trying to answer
cases.
him. We're not talking. The state is not involved. You see, I agree with
Such
you.
a shameless
Let me clarify. It's
straw
not
man.
shameless at all. It clarifies the whole issue.
Doesn't.
If that
Doesn't clarify
stairwell
anything.
belongs to the state, and yet if I sleep in there, you are saying it's my private property. You are saying it's not.
In reality, it's not. But
Right.
if one
You're saying it
homeless
belongs to the
person
state.
comes to the spot of
You're
another
saying-
homeless person,
hang on.
there will be
The
a fight.
gentleman here is
Because he
saying-
will perceive that space as his space.
Right.
There will be a
But
fight
you're saying
between
it
the
belongs to
two.
the state.
Huh? It
Right
does.
is right then.
It does. The
Right
state
is
will
right.
not
Which
defend that
corresponds to what he
space
was saying
because
before.
the state doesn't care enough
So
to
in
defend
other words,
it.
with these two examples and with your response, we've clarified the issue.
No, we haven't.
We have.
no.
Watch
You
the
haven't
video.
clarified
Watch the
anything.
video. Listen to that little component here.
Okay, Heiko, let's
Let me
play
repeat-
again.
Let me just repeat it quickly.
You don't need
Just
to repeat
quickly
anything.
for you to understand. The gentleman here said, if you have a cave and you live in it, and someone comes into it, so in other words, in primitive society,
Yeah,
which
cave in a
Everybody
cave-
knows
I
what you're
was
about to
asked-
say.
which
The
I
logic
was-
you're going
cave in a
to.
primitive
Can I
society
explain?
and
I
a cave
wanted
and
a
a
leeway.
tunnel in
I
West
wanted
Westminster.
a leeway to explain why this little triangle of argument
Well, if
has
you-
clarified
something
the
goes
issue.
through-
Look, there is still private
You may not
property in
agree
the
with what I've
primitive
said.
society and
You might
in the
choose to take
advanced
his
society.
position,
The
his
notion
position,
slightly
his
changes.
position,
You're
or mine.
comparing apples
But
with
it
oranges.
clarifies
You're
what
not
we're
comparing
saying.
like
It
with like.
remains
Right?
more or less roughly
It
the same.
clarifies what the
Might-
differences in
might
our
make
arguments
it right.
are
Once you
and
defend-
allows you
get
to
the
make a
right to defend
decision
something,
about
it is
which
your
you think is
property.
correct.
It's a false comparison.
Wait.
You're comparing a tunnel
Okay.
over there in Westminster.
We're supposed to play a game. Let's play a
cave
game.
in the Philippines. That's not comparable.
Cave anywhere, why not?
Because
It is
there are
shelter.
certain laws that
What is
apply
the
here.
cave? You're talking about the cave as shelter, right?
Yeah, a pre-Laxian
No, but you were, when you referred to the
Paradise
cave, you were
cave.
talking
I
about
am
the cave
surprised we're
as a
having
medium of
with
shelter.
that
Expecting him to
there.
defend such a.
It is an area of shelter.
such
Yeah,
a
where the
ridiculous
law
argument. Yeah.
applies according to Westminster. That is not comparable to some theoretical cave in some communist paradise.
So the question is,
So
which
that's
I,
fine.
the question I
It's a
addressed
false
was as
analysis.
follows. In the
False
historical
comparison.
evolution of human beings, if there was no definition of private property, if there was no alienatability of the object concerned,
Nothing to do with it.
then it is not private property.
No.
Whereas Pavel and yourself, I'm not even now gonna bother arguing with you. I'm merely gonna clarify what you said so that we can understand and the viewers can understand what the issues at dispute are.
Okay.
I'm
I
not
promise,
trying
Heiko. I
to
promise to you.
dispute
I
your
promise you.
argument.
I promise to you.
I'm merely
Heiko.
clarifying what you said.
I'll make a promise right here, right now.
You
That
said.
today, I'm going to leave, and I'm not going to disturb you anymore in your speeches
Why
today.
disturb
No,
you?
but wait.
I'm
Let's play a
trying to
game.
clarify
Very
an
short,
issue.
very simple game. Very simple game. Only a few questions. Let's imagine that this camera over here, of content over everything, is a tree. It's a tall.
There is a tree here.
No,
we don't
but,
need the
no,
camera.
but let's imagine.
Take the tree.
No,
You
no.
imagine.
And
Who does it belong to?
No. You will understand why I want you to imagine a tree and not declare this tree. You will understand it soon. Imagine this is a tree that doesn't belong to any park, to any society, any country, anybody. It doesn't belong to anybody. It's a land that has not been discovered.
So whose land is this?
It's a tree. It belongs to
Where-
no one.
where is the land?
It's a new island.
Where is the
It's a
land?
new island
Right.
that has not been
Nobody
discovered.
owns it.
Nobody owns it.
It's not private
Nobody
property.
owns it.
Therefore, by definition, it isn't private property.
Yes, I have an axe. I come near the tree. I cut the tree. Is that cut tree my private property?
Depends what you do with it.
I would say that it is. Nobody is.
Okay.
What are you going
That's
to do?
You're
one-
about to blow a
What
fuse
are you
now,
doing with
actually.
it? What,
Okay.
If you cut down the, what do you do with
no,
the
no,
tree?
don't interrupt. Don't interrupt.
What do you do with the
cut
tree?
the tree into lumber. Is the lumber your private property?
It can be. Depends what you do. with
You
it.
make a chair
If you
with
burn
the
it,
lumber.
if you
Is
bur-
the chair your private property?
Depends. Well, yes, but it depends what you do with it.
I give up.
If it is merely,
Goodbye. I give up from
if
the
it is
argument.
merely something you sit on,
He doesn't understand private.
my friend,
I'm sorry, man.
my friend, if you go to Clapham Common,
He's gone, man. Look.
the tree is on a piece of land that he said belongs to nobody, right? The tree also belongs to nobody. That person attempts to make that tree his object. He may chop it into lumps and do something with it. If you simply consume something, it is not private property. Now, it could be private property if you can alienate it to someone else. If you merely use it for yourself, it's not private property.
But by using it, by working on it, surely I've made it my property. By cutting it and,
You
and
could
working,
make it private property
By taking it.
having the ability to alienate it.
Somebody say private property again, please. I don't think I've heard it.
But I want to say,
The ability to alienate it. I said long ago during the course of this meeting that human beings distinguish themselves from other animals by making tools. So by definition, I was explaining that human beings made objects that in some way were theirs. But something being theirs does not necessarily make it private property. It is only by being able to alienate that thing and exchange it for something else that it becomes private property.
can I put a different angle to it? Can I
Stay in my cave.
I mean, a bird eats an ant. Is it private property? That's what he's saying it is.
can I put a different
It
angle?
doesn't matter whether the ant is chopped into 100 pieces because it tastes nicer that way, or whether he eats it in one go. That's what he's saying.
Can I?
He's saying if the ant chops it up into 20 pieces or decides to sit on it for an hour, then it becomes private property. No, because unless you can alienate it and recognize it in the eyes of another creature as belonging to that creature, it's not private property.
surely it's innate that we fight for that possession. I mean, that if I've got something that I don't want you
Why
to
do you have
have,
to fight for it?
because I don't.
Private property doesn't have to be fought over.
If you've got that
Maybe,
coat
it
and that
doesn't
coat-
have to be.
Listen, if you've got
private property can be sold on eBay.
Look, you've got a coat and it's cold, and I need that coat, and the difference between you having that coat and me having that coat is life and death. Maybe I'll fight you for that coat. Do you see that? Do you see?
What about it?
So I am fighting for your possession, and you are fighting for survival to keep that coat.
You may fight for that.
I will.
That's-
I would. No.
You may or may not. It depends. If I'm a great big ogre with an axe and you're a weakling, right?
Max is
You're
right.
hardly going to fight me for it, right?
that's what I meant
So
by
you're
Max
talking
is
about
right.
under some circumstances you would be willing to fight me to get my coat, right? Yes, you may be willing to fight me to get my coat.
So surely
does
that's
does that make it private property?
Yes.
Does it?
If you fight back, if I try to nick your coat, you fight back.
If I fight you, if I fight you without private property, just because I don't like the look of you, does that make me private property?
The point is, if you cooked your dinner and you put it on your table and I came over and I ate that, you'd be pissed off because that was your
Now, obvious. Now, these are platitudes, my friend.
But if it's
This is-
survival, if it's a matter of question of survival,
Yes, but we're not dealing with that, are we? What we're dealing with is alienable objects which you can exchange for one another. Now, you are saying, I will seize something from you. Private property in the world is not based on seizing things from other people. Some of it is, and most of it isn't.
A lot of it is.
If you go down the road here, our recognition of private property today is entirely based on exchange, not based upon seizure, right? Now that doesn't mean there is no seizure,
There's a lot
but
of
it's
it.
based on exchange. The foundation of private property, historically, yes, it could be on seizure, but the incrustation of private property as a system of society, organising society, is based on exchange.
Money.
It's not based on I grab from you. You know,
Based on money.
I go into Primark, I punch someone and grab a coat and run away.
No,
right?
that's true.
It's not based on that. It's based I go into Primark, I've accumulated private property of my own, turned it into the money form, and exchanged it for a coat. That's how it works. And the fact of the matter is, it's a damn sight easier to spend some money in Primark buying a coat than to rob someone.
Yes.
Any case, we've been speaking a long time. I think we've dealt with some issues. I will present on the YouTube video for those of you who are unaware of the question, because I know it's a new subject to be broached. I will be presenting on the YouTube channel a number of academic and historical sources from the British Museum down to archaeology, anthropology, and
Matriarchy. Do something on the.
and matriarchy. I will post videos, I will post articles on that question, so you can do some research, come back to the meeting next week
And
and check up whether I made this up or whether I've got evidential basis to do so. COE, and then it'll be Heiko, Khoo under that. Thanks very much, it's been a pleasure talking. See you later.
Yeah, thank you.
Today was your best speech.
Read Engel.
Come take over everything from your government.
Come, man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
Lay the foundation, and then we can build on.
What about me and this brother? He's black skin. I'm not black skin. We together decided to help another black person. Can we?
Of course,
can we do it or not?
You're free to do that.
Can I have any other black group to say, this guy, he's cooperating with non-black, or he's letting the white master again back to us?
I think, you know what, I think...
You know, this was happening.
Sorry.